In January 2017, Dele Alli scored twice against Chelsea to end their 13-game winning run. He was only 20 years old, but he already looked like one of the most dangerous midfielders in the Premier League. He was scoring goals, winding up defenders, playing with ridiculous confidence, and becoming a key part of a Tottenham team that looked like it could challenge anyone. But just a few years later, everything had changed. The goals dried up, the confidence disappeared, the minutes became harder to come by, and suddenly, one of England's most exciting young players had become one of football's biggest mysteries. So how did a player who once looked like England's future become one of football's most misunderstood careers? To understand Dele Alli's rise, you have to go back to where it started, MK Dons. Dele joined the academy at 11, and by 16 he was already playing first-team football. That alone tells you how highly he was rated. But what made him stand out wasn't just that he was young, it was the way he played. He wasn't a safe midfielder who just kept the ball moving. He played with risk. He wanted to get forward, find space, and affect games in the final third. Even then, Dele was hard to define. He had the frame of a box-to-box midfielder, the timing of a second striker, and the confidence to try things most young players wouldn't. By the 2014-15 season, he'd become one of the best young players outside the Premier League. He scored 16 goals from midfield, helped MK Dons win promotion, and started attracting serious attention from bigger clubs. Enter Tottenham Hotspur. In February 2015, they signed him for around £5 million and loaned him back to MK Dons for the rest of the season. When Dele arrived properly that summer, it became clear Spurs hadn't just signed potential, they'd signed someone ready to play, and the timing was perfect. Mauricio Pochettino was building one of the most exciting young teams in the Premier League. Tottenham were intense, aggressive, and full of players still improving. Harry Kane, Christian Eriksen, Son Heung-min. It was a team built on energy, movement, and belief. Dele fit straight into that. He wasn't a normal midfielder. He didn't control games like Eriksen or dominate physically like Dembele. His strength was timing. When Kane dropped deep, Dele would run beyond him. When the ball went wide, he attacked the box. When defenders switched off, he was already in the space they'd left behind. That made him incredibly difficult to mark. He could be quiet for 10 minutes, then suddenly decide the game. The moment they really announced him came against Crystal Palace in January 2016. Control, flick over the defender, then volley into the bottom corner. It was outrageous. He finished his first Premier League season with 10 league goals, became an England international, and won PFA Young Player of the Year. Then came his real peak. In 2016-17, Tottenham finished second in the Premier League and played some of the best football in the country. Dele was central to it, scoring 18 league goals from midfield. One of his defining performances came against Chelsea in January 2017. Dele scored twice, both headers, both from perfectly timed runs, both showing exactly why he was so dangerous. By the end of that season, he had won PFA Young Player of the Year again, making it back-to-back awards. At that point, the hype wasn't fake. Dele Alli really was one of the best young players in Europe. He was scoring regularly, playing Champions League football, becoming important for England, and doing it all before he'd even turned 22. For a while, he looked like the perfect player in the perfect team under the perfect manager, which is why what happened next felt so strange. Because Dele's decline didn't happen in one dramatic moment. There wasn't a single injury, scandal, or transfer that suddenly ended everything. It was more gradual than that. After his peak season, the numbers started to drop. He still had moments and he was still important for Spurs, but he no longer looked quite as sharp or as free. Part of that was because Tottenham were changing too. And in 2019, Pochettino left, and that felt like a major turning point. Pochettino had given Dele freedom, belief, and a clear role. After he left, Dele never really seemed to find that same place in the team again. Under Jose Mourinho, there were brief flashes, but not a proper revival. His minutes became inconsistent, his confidence looked lower, and the conversation around him started to change. Suddenly, people weren't talking about how high his ceiling was. They were asking whether he still cared enough. By January 2022, his Tottenham career was over. Everton looked like a fresh start, but the club was unstable, fighting pressure near the bottom of the league, and Dele never really found rhythm there either. Then came Besiktas, another new club, another chance, but again, it didn't really happen. And by that point, the question had completely changed. It was no longer, how good can Dele Alli become? It was, what actually happened to him? For years, the easiest answer was that he wasted his talent. But in 2023, Dele sat down with Gary Neville, and suddenly, the story became much more complicated. For the first time, Dele spoke openly about what had been happening away from football. He talked about a difficult childhood, including abuse at a young age, instability growing up, and being exposed to things no child should have to deal with. He said he started smoking at 7, dealing drugs at 8, and was later adopted at 12. He also spoke about his mental health, his addiction to sleeping tablets, and spending 6 weeks in rehab. Suddenly, his decline looked very different. It wasn't just about tactics, form, or whether he still cared enough. It was about a player carrying years of trauma while trying to perform under the pressure of Premier League football.